Welcome to a special Hurricane Helene edition of Pattrn. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams reporting from Asheville, North Carolina. One of the areas hit the hardest by this deadly, massive, and powerful storm. In the wake of Helene's path across 6 states, the normalcy of life is long gone for millions of people, with homes destroyed, families torn apart, and livelihoods wiped out. It begs the question, did climate change play a role in magnifying the size and strength of Helene? Stick with us as we explore the possibilities right here on today's special edition of Pattrn.
Something historically horrific has happened here.
I mean, there's no roads. There's no evidence of roads.
I'm still wrapping my head around this one. I can't even believe what I'm facing.
Came quick. Love y'all.
This is a wrecking ball scene. They're going to have to tear down most of everything that was in its path.
Hello and welcome to this special Helene edition of Pattrn. I'm Stephanie Abrams.
Hey everybody, I'm Jordan Steele. We're going to start things off today with a look at some of the most jaw-dropping images that we've seen during and after Helene made landfall on Florida's Big Bend as a Category 4 hurricane on September 26th.
Oh, I hope not. Oh, we're gonna go up in the attic. We have to, guys.
I mean, just look at that. This was inside the home of Jeffrey Fuller in Hampton, Tennessee. Raging water began to overtake the building. His daughter, Stacy, says that the family was trapped for about 5 hours, Steph, before they were rescued.
Wow. And here in St. Pete Beach, Florida, powerful storm surge pushed feet of water and sand into nearby communities. As the water receded, the sand was left behind, nearly cementing vehicles in place. Can you believe that, Jordan?
Unreal. Meanwhile, the Georgia National Guard stepped in to help clear roadways here in Mount Vernon. Helene unleashed powerful winds that ended up taking down trees. It destroyed power lines. It damaged multiple homes. And as a result, hundreds of thousands of customers across the eastern half of the state lost power.
And as floodwater recedes here in Asheville, North Carolina, the extent of Helene's wrath becomes more and more evident. Just look at this neighborhood submerged in feet of floodwater. The area saw unprecedented rainfall, upwards of 14 inches. In recent years, Asheville has been known as Climate City to thousands of climate professionals who flock to the area to study the atmosphere. And here you can find the North Carolina Institute for Climate Studies, as well as the headquarters for the National Centers for Environmental Information, or NCEI. It is home to the world's largest collection of weather data. We got a chance to stop by NCEI to find out how Helene impacted the Federal Data Center. Now, the building managed to escape major damage, and NOAA does confirm that all the employees are accounted for. But the building lost electricity after the storm, and that knocked their systems offline. Jordan, there is no timeline for when they'll be back up.
So you mentioned, Steph, that some of the flooding actually impacted NCEI. Was any of the data that we use here at the Weather Channel, was any of that data compromised?
Yeah. No, none of it's compromised. It's being held in other locations, and then once they get back online, they will then bring it all into NCEI. And the NCEI is where the nation's observations go to live a second career. So what does that mean exactly? That means when you collect weather data, you average it over a 30-year period, and you then have climatology. And it's not collecting dust. It's useful. It really allows us to kind of look back and see how the climate is changing from years past. And then, of course, Jordan, how we forecast for the future.
That's right. And a lot of that is changing right in front of our eyes. You know, the magnitude of this storm, Steph, it took Asheville, North Carolina by surprise, unfortunately. Even those expert local climate professionals, for some of them, it was a shock to see what happened.
I mean, it was just an absolute devastating blow, but communities are pressing forward and coming together to continue the search for missing neighbors, friends, and loved ones.
Touted as a haven, a place to escape the harsh conditions of extreme weather. But instead, The Asheville, North Carolina area turned into a death trap.
You know, we woke up at like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was already up to above our knees with some rushing water.
People here may never be the same after Helene's devastating flooding.
You're not expecting to get like almost a tropical storm, but it's like a hurricane itself over here.
Despite being almost 400 miles away from where Helene made landfall, more than 18 inches of rain fell across parts of western North Carolina and rushed downhill. Whoa! Leaving residents scrambling for their lives.
So I grabbed a mattress from one of our rooms and put it by the door, and I was gonna throw it out the door and jump on it if I had to use that as kind of like a flotation device.
I saw buildings crashed into buildings. We saw a whole roof of a house just float down the river. So this is one part of a very, very big deal. It's devastating.
As people flee the coasts to escape hurricanes arriving on higher seas, it seems there's no perfect place to escape the effects of increasingly severe storms. In Asheville, the main concern now is tracking down neighbors, friends, and family members.
We were told to look for people in houses.
Cece? Adam? Can you come to the front?
Yeah.
No body that I can see and no smell. The tree fell on the bed. I want you to come and look with me.
I don't think there's a body in here.
I don't think so either.
There's probably more than 100 other people doing what we're doing, so anyone who's worried about their loved ones, everyone's just...
Yeah, we're all looking for him.
Call and somebody's gonna look.
So hard, and so many folks are going through this. In this weekend's Facts Are Facts, the record-breaking numbers, they're still rolling in from the latest climate disaster. We want to take a look at a couple of those. Life-threatening storm surge broke records in Cedar Key, Florida. That rushed through the coastal city at more than 9 feet high. Also, the heavy rain from Helene set new records in Asheville, North Carolina. Nearly 14 inches of rain in a 3-day period. That triggered catastrophic flooding and unfortunately deadly flooding in the city. Helene also resulted in 30 flash flood emergencies the day after landfall. This set a national record for the most flash flood emergencies declared in a single day. Now, there's no denying that climate disasters are getting stronger, occurring more frequently. And Steph, they're happening in places where people aren't really expecting them.
Yeah, and while Helene wasn't caused by climate change, it undoubtedly played a role in amplifying the impacts of this colossal storm. Joining us back in the studio to talk about this is climate specialist Carl Parker. Carl, I want to talk about when the storm is still back in the Gulf of Mexico. It rapidly intensified. How does climate change influence rapid intensification?
Well, we've seen an upward trend in rapid intensification, not only in the Atlantic, but around the world. That is when a storm strengthens by 35 miles per hour in the space of 24 hours. So when we look at storms that have strengthened by 40 miles per hour in the Atlantic basin, there have only been 10 of those going back to 1950. But take a look at the distribution of those storms. For the first 40 years, there were only 2. And then we had an uptick from 1990 to 2009. And then in the last 15 years, there have been 5 of those storms, including Helene, which strengthened by 55 miles per hour. And this is really important because it gives people less time to react. It gives officials and the public less time to react when these storms take off like that.
Well, and it's unfortunate too because we've seen so often that these rapid intensification, happens when it's closer to home. So as we see these storms that are intensifying and they're getting stronger, what does the research suggest about that, as it's making its way, unfortunately, here to the United States?
What we're seeing is a greater proportion of high-end storms, so storms that are category 3 and 4 and 5. And when you look at what's happened in the Atlantic, it's sort of jarring. We have had 8 category 4 and 5 landfalls in the last 8 years. The previous period for the 8 landfalls of category 4 and 5 storms was 57 years, 1960 to 2016.
Now it happened in 8?
And now it happened in 8 years. And so the modeling has shown this for a while, that for every 1 degree Celsius of warming in the ocean, winds would increase by about 4 to 5 miles per hour. But remember that wind damage is exponential. So it may well be that due to the warming in the Gulf of Mexico, we saw about a 40 to 50% increase in the damage potential from Hurricane Helene.
Wow.
And some of that big damage is obviously caused by surge. So how much worse will the storm surge get due to all the rising sea levels, of course, thanks to the changing climate?
Yeah, it's really staggering what happened in Florida. We saw record levels of surge at Cedar Key and also Clearwater Beach and also in St. Pete. When you look at St. Pete, the previous record for water level rise was 4 feet. This one was 6.3 feet. It blew away the previous record. And when you look at the top 10 water levels in St. Pete, going back to 1947, 6 of those have happened since 2012. And that is due in part to the fact that we've seen about a 1-foot water level rise in St. Pete over about the last 100 years, which means that we're going to see an increased experience with these higher water levels. That is what we call a compound event.
Right.
Stronger storms plus sea level rise means more storm surge coming into the
and the
coast.
sea level is still rising.
Yes.
Well, I want to go inland now. We go, a couple hundred miles, several hundred miles inland to Asheville, North Carolina, where you guys, unfortunately, you've seen the images just slammed by the Helene's heavy rainfall and the big flooding. What are some of the factors that led to such a huge amount of rain with this system specifically?
Well, a couple of things. One is that we're seeing an increase in evaporation rates over the ocean, and also warmer air has more capacity to hold moisture. It's about 7% for saturated air with about 1 degree Celsius of warming. We've seen 1.3, so it's probably closer to 8 to 9%.
Okay.
But recent research has also shown that in the core of tropical cyclones, it could be closer to 17 to 22% more moisture. So that's a lot more rain that we're seeing falling on the ground. And there was a recent rapid attribution study that suggested that maybe we saw a 50% increase in the amount of rainfall that came down from Helene on the high end. What they do is they look at the normal range of variability and see how far outside an event lies outside of that. That's really important because our infrastructure, for the most part, is 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 years old. It was not built for that. It was built for a different climate. And so when you're introducing an increase of 20% or 30% or 40% in rainfall, you're going to overwhelm that infrastructure.
And unfortunately, Steph, we could see what happens to that infrastructure with scenes like right behind you right now.
Yeah, right behind me. And then this, of course, brings up that question, guys, that a lot of people are asking. Well, should we have something more than a Category 5 hurricane? Should there be a Category 6?
Yeah, there's a growing concern about that. Because if you think about the fact that, we've had a storm that got to 215 miles per hour, and the damage potential, the destructive potential of a storm like that is so much greater. And so, yeah, there's absolutely a group of people out there who are saying, yes, we should be looking at least a Category 6 just to let people know that we're getting into different territory.
And that's just on the San Francisco. We were talking about the high-risk days, and maybe I think there's going to be a lot of questions as to should there be a ceiling. Carl Parker, storm specialist, or climate specialist, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it so much. All right, Steph, it was such a great conversation, but it really puts things into perspective on any future storm that comes down the pipeline could be even bigger.
Yeah. And by the way, that brings us to our next topic, home insurance. When it comes to insurance, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But depending on where you live, your home may be uninsurable. Why the insurance gap is and what you can do about it. And have you seen this video of an EV erupting in flames in a flooded garage? What going electric means for your fire risk in the event of a natural disaster, it's all about chemistry. We're going to explain coming up.
Well, we're learning cleaning up the mess from Helene will likely reach the high single-digit billions of dollars, according to a new report from the insurance risk mitigation group, Aon. They report as of September 30th, the state of Florida alone already saw 40,000 insurance claims.
And before Helene even struck, the U.S. had already seen 20 separate billion-dollar disasters this year. Because of the increasing frequency of these disasters, insurance companies are forced to make changes and in some cases refusing to offer coverage at all. United Policyholders is a nonprofit organization that offers education and support for consumers. Joining us now is Senior Program Officer Emily Rogan. Emily, thanks for being with us today. We're already seeing this problem in parts of Florida that see frequent hurricanes and tropical storms. It's also a problem in California because of wildfires. How did we get to this point?
Thank you for having me. So that's a really good question. You know, with the increase in disasters, the insurance companies are more and more trying to figure out ways where they can still be profitable. But is it on the backs of consumers? You know, insurance is a safety net and often a requirement for you to even have a mortgage to buy a home. So we really want to make sure that we're striking the right balance of making sure that the homeowner is also able to protect their home and their assets and be ready for disasters like we saw this week.
And Emily, we know that, when it comes to these policies, they're not just being canceled. In some cases, these premiums are skyrocketing. So my question is, what can homeowners do when you are faced with this situation?
Right. So the new normal, unfortunately, is having to pay a lot more attention to your insurance. If you see your rates go up, the best thing you can do is take a look at your policy, see what your deductible is, and if you can, to raise it to a thoughtful amount that you'd be able to still have that safety net, that the deductible wouldn't preclude you from having any coverage at all, but also making sure that you can afford the premiums to have that safety net in place.
Emily, Hurricane Helene is a prime example that damage from hurricanes can happen far inland. Will we get to a point that people that live far away from the coast or are landlocked, that people in those states could actually be denied insurance?
That's a really good question. With this multi-state event, what we're seeing is people who had flood damage, which is not covered under your standard home insurance policy, but also wind damage and potentially wind-driven rain. So we want to make sure that insurance is covering the house. So if you do have a tree that falls on your house, something that is covered by your home policy, we want to make sure that if you have the same insurance company, whether you're in Tennessee or North Carolina, that they haven't carved out coverage so that you can actually get money to repair your home and restore your home and move back.
Right. And, just looking at United policyholders, for instance, they've got a program that focuses on taking preventative measures to get ready before a major storm. So what are some of those things that we should be doing to minimize the cost of these storm-related damages before they actually occur in the first place?
Right. Any sort of mitigation that you can do to harden your home is worth the money that you'll spend. It depends on where you live and what kind of hazard that you're focused on, whether it's, strapping down your roof, whether it is taking steps to make defensible space if we're talking about wildfire, or bolting down your home to its foundation for earthquakes. All of these things will make a big difference. It's especially important to make sure that you're talking about the hazards that are most common for your area, but also what you're not insured for, right? So if you're going to spend money, to make sure that it's to bolster where you might have a gap in your safety net.
Makes sense. Emily Rogan from United Policyholders, thank you so much for your time and your information. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Jordan, people in Florida with no mortgage, a lot of them are just going without. We've seen that happen more and more. But the problem is, if you have a mortgage, as Emily was mentioning, you have to have insurance. And I would love to see some sort of policy change. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, Jordan, fingers crossed. That actually helps all of us, right? That it's not so expensive and profits and all of that, but maybe
the conversation is coming more common, so I'm sure that topic specifically will be covered. As we move on, when we come back, do you like peanuts, pecans, anything made from cotton? The price we'll all be paying soon for the damage farmers are experiencing in Georgia after Helene.
I'm Stephanie Abrams in Asheville, North Carolina, where Helene dumped nearly 2 feet of rain over parts of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But days of rain leading up to Helene's arrival exacerbated the flooding that followed, shocking even most weather-seasoned residents.
I've been here 20 years, and I was here in 2004 for the 100-year flood. And then 2 weeks later, they had another 100-year flood. So my wife wondered, where did you move me? We've had hurricanes. We usually get the remnants, we get the rain, but not like this. I don't know if we've recovered from 2004. I mean, this is a wrecking ball scene. You know, they're going to have to tear down most of everything was in its path. But yeah, I mean, you know, self-service and electricity, I don't know when that's going to come back on. Water, you know.
And experts are still measuring where this event will stack up in the weather record books. But when you hear the phrase 100-year flood or even 1,000-year flood, it doesn't mean the chance of this flood happening once, you know, every 1,000 years. It actually refers to the statistical likelihood of this amount of rainfall happening in any given year. A 0.1% chance mathematically is written out as a 1 in 1,000 chance, and that's how you get the 1,000-year flood stat, Jordan.
Exactly, which is unfortunate because that means you could have back-to-back, let's say 1 in 100-year flood events. Well, there is perhaps no group more in tune with what's happening with our changing climate than farmers. An agricultural community in South Georgia, they're suffering after Helene. Their losses are staggering, and we could all end up feeling the impacts of their losses.
It affects you too. If you think what's going on in the Southeast as a result of Hurricane Helene doesn't affect you, think again. It's been the beginning of harvest season in these states. We'll see a lot of economic impact in our grocery stores.
Georgia is the second largest cotton producing state in the country. This storm was nothing short of catastrophic for us. We had cotton that was ready to harvest. In some fields, I had to have really hard conversations with growers about it's not worth harvesting. In our state, we're staring firmly down the barrel of a 35 to 40% loss across the board on cotton, which is about 600,000 bales, 5 or 6% of the U.S.'s total cotton production.
When a cotton crop is lost, this means the price of cotton-related goods will go up in the coming months. Your t-shirts, blue jeans, tablecloths, Q-tips, hats, and all will be more expensive.
Cotton is a significant crop for us. It's number 2 in terms of receipts behind poultry. A lot of poultry houses were significantly damaged in the track of the storm.
You're talking almost $200 million in chicken houses that were lost in this storm. And the chickens, once they get out of the house, you can't sell them.
Poultry is usually around a 6-week crop from chick to harvesting that chicken. And so Chick-fil-A, your Dino Nuggets may all see a big impact there as well.
People may not think of pecans in Georgia, but it's significant commodity for us. And so those trees were pretty much full with nuts right now. A lot of them were blown off trees. And for the older, larger pecan trees, they were completely blown over. If that's completely destroyed, you might have 15 or 20 years until you get that level of productivity back.
The dessert tables at the coming holidays will be priced higher. They say in some areas they will be without power for possibly 4 weeks to 13 weeks. No power means no good way to milk cows. Milking by hand isn't realistic for many family operations as their milking herds are larger than what can be milked in a day. Milk, cheese, butter, ice cream, and other dairy products may be in limited supply over the coming months.
It's almost like kicking a man while he's down. Right, is what this storm has done. We had so many people that were already headed towards going out of business. And they will not be farming next year if we don't get help now.
Farmers are losing their livelihoods and still earn only pennies on the dollar. They need your grace, prayers, support, and compassion as their future is extremely uncertain. It affects you too.
And the hard part with this is I'm already super mindful about what I'm buying at the grocery store. Steph, we're going to have to be even more mindful in the coming months.
Yeah, that we will. Asheville, North Carolina is deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It's a place that some deemed a climate haven to escape extreme weather. Up next, we're driving into the ideas of climate havens.
I just lived through my first major climate disaster. For those who don't know, I live in Northeast Tennessee, and yesterday my region was hit with catastrophic flooding caused by the remnants of Hurricane Helene. This storm was absolutely made worse by climate change, and until we acknowledge that, there's no way we're going to prevent something like this from happening here again in the future. Right now, we still don't know the full extent of damage here in Northeast Tennessee, but what we do know is that it is not as bad as what's going on over the mountains in western North Carolina. I'll be updating both the caption and comments under this video as I find information about mutual aid and recovery efforts. And I know that most of y'all are not from Appalachia, but we could really use your help recovering. It's going to take billions of dollars and probably decades to help our communities recover from this insanely historic storm.
That video was posted by popular eco-influencer Elena Wood, aka the Garbage Queen. And the truth is there is no escaping climate change, even where I am here in Asheville, North Carolina, a town that some have called a climate haven.
Right, but the truth is there is no such thing, and you can't escape the impacts of climate change. We do want to bring in Dr. Jesse Keenan with Tulane University. Dr. Keenan, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Keenan, let's get straight to it. Do climate havens exist?
No, climate havens are largely a fiction of the media who loves to have lists and to identify a popular phenomenon. But it is worth recognizing that there are sending zones and receiving zones in America. There are places where people are leaving and there are places where people are going. And it's a complicated push and pull. It's a very messy process about what we talk in terms of mobility, how people make decisions about where they're living and how they're living. But we know that climate is shaping this. People are sometimes leaving or being pushed because of climate exposure, climate impacts, chronic stresses. Sometimes people are drawn in by moderate weather and what they perceive are lower levels of risk. But at the end of the day, across the United States, there are a wide variety of impacts from climate and climate-attributed impacts that there is no escaping. It impacts nearly everybody. And when you're talking about extreme precipitation, it's widespread across the United States. There is no place that is insulated from these risks, particularly as the climate warms and we have more precipitation and more moisture in the atmosphere.
Very true, but there was a time Asheville was considered a place that was relatively safe from climate change, obviously before this storm. Why do you think that is? Why did we perceive that it was a safe place?
Well, people have been moving to Asheville, and I likely will continue to move to Asheville because of a very moderate climate in terms of heat, elevation, humidity. There's a number of different factors that people look at when they're considering where they want to live. And we know that people from the Southwest, from the coastal Carolinas, from Florida have been moving to Asheville, and they will likely continue to do so. But what I think people didn't fully appreciate is that the various nature of risk. Wherever you live, there's going to be risk, particularly in this case of flash flooding, given the steep notion of the terrain, the poor quality infrastructure, and the limited communications about where flood zones are and are not. So, you know, it's a challenging thing. People will continue to move away from the most high-risk areas, and they will look at places like Asheville that have a moderate climate in terms of our ambient temperature and seasonal temperatures, but they shouldn't overlook that there are always going to be this risk for extreme events.
You mentioned about people moving or perhaps migrating due to areas that are maybe less prone to climate disasters. You said Asheville is one of those moderate areas. Are there other areas of the country that you would say are less prone?
Well, I'll tell you what the scholarship and the science and social science is telling us. These places already exist. We know that all across the United States, people are moving to certain places because there are certain amenities, environmental amenities. This varies across the Northeast, the Midwest, but for instance, Ocala, Florida is one of the fastest receiving zones in the United States. It is inland. It has a relatively low level of flood risk relative to other parts of Florida. There's much lower insurance costs in Ocala, and it has been cited as one of many factors. It's never just climate by itself, but it's been cited as one of many factors that are drawing people into Central Florida as they move north from South Florida. So these places exist all across the United States, and I think it's better to think about this in terms of sending zones and receiving zones, because there is no haven, there is no escaping the worst of extreme events when it comes to climate change.
Dr. Jesse Keenan, thank you so much for joining us today. And Jordan, I want to talk about something that he had mentioned. He talked about a lower cost. So you have to think about how much it will cost for cities to adapt to the changing climate and that influx of residents. So mitigation will, of course, cost more in places like New York and Miami, where here in Asheville, we have that lower cost of living and you got a lot more nature to work with.
Right. And so you got to think about that if you have a move and you're moving, where's everyone else going and how will that impact me in the future? Of course, it could get so complicated when you take all these factors in, but if you're going to make the move or the migration, it's important to do so.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's the video from Hurricane Helene that's sparking debate online. Did the storm cause spontaneous combustion in EVs? We're calling in the fire marshal to find out if there's a real threat.
We just want to give another reminder about electric vehicles, e-bikes, anything with a lithium-ion battery. If you had anything like that in your garage or in your house and it was flooded, please get that out of your house as soon as possible.
Welcome back into Pattrn. That was the mayor of Treasure Island, Florida, talking about the dangers of lithium battery-operated devices after a hurricane. And it might sound like a crazy thing to worry about, but Jordan, have you seen this video? An EV parked inside a flooded garage catches fire seemingly out of nowhere. It happened as saltwater filled the garage after Helene made landfall. Just wild.
Wild. And the fire doesn't stop. Unfortunately, it keeps going, and the whole camera view gets blocked by the smoke. To help us better understand what really is going on here, we brought in Florida State Fire Marshal Jimmy Patronis. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And our first question for you is, I guess, the video has gone viral, and there's a lot of people saying it's fake, it's AI. Lay it out right now. Is it real, and is this a real threat?
It is a very real threat. I'll be happy to share with you some of my own personal videos that I have taken from the events that I saw firsthand with Hurricane Ian. In the case with Hurricane Helene, what we've had so far to date that we've documented, 43 lithium-ion related battery fires. Some of these were electric wheelchairs, e-bikes, scooters. We've had 9 EV fires that have taken place. And I'm sorry, salt water and lithium-ion batteries just do not mix. They put at harm first responders, homeowners, but most importantly is innocent people that don't realize the risk because of what flood waters can do to that particular technology.
Now, the flooding in that video, it really isn't that high. As we make the switch to more electric vehicles, how much salt water has to be on the ground for people to be worried? Do they have to be worried if they drive through it and it dries out, or if it's sitting in it? How deep does the water have to be?
So, I mean, if you get any type of salt water into your vehicle, you're probably going to have a likelihood that you're going to file an insurance claim. So if you have had your vehicle in a submerged status, you need to call your insurance company, you need to file a claim. They will know what type of car you've got because your VIN will be filed with them. And then that tow truck operator will be instructed on where to dispose it. You will see these vehicles are in parking lots all by themselves because of how much of an accident is waiting to happen because of the lithium-ion battery component.
And unfortunately, in this video that we showed of the car burning in the garage, the whole house burnt down. Thankfully, the family was able to escape. But why is it so hard to put these kinds of fires out? We can't just throw more water on it.
Correct. So a lithium-ion battery literally will burn submerged. There's no amount of water you can put on it to stop the fire. All you can try to do is control the temperature. But we've got instances where a firefighter has gotten a lithium-ion battery somewhat under control, and then hours later it will reignite. Again, these are it's fantastic technology, but it's got some really wicked unintended consequences if not respected.
Okay, so people that are EV owners, is there anything that can be done to avoid a disaster like this?
Yeah, just stay away from rising waters. If you've got an EV, you just want to make sure that you're keeping it somewhere when a storm has come that's a higher ground. But that doesn't necessarily mean just putting it in a parking garage might be the perfect effect. You want to make sure you've got it where it's outside of where storm surge can hit. So, I mean, again, unfortunately, that may be and maybe a couple miles away, but you've got to get it away from any of those coastal areas. And this isn't really as much a Dallas problem or a Tulsa problem or even an Atlanta problem. It's definitely where you have storm surge is where you have the greatest probability that these problems are going to happen.
Right. It's that salt water that you were talking about. Jimmy Patronis, thank you for your time and your awareness on the topic. We appreciate it. You know, Steph, it's interesting because, I was talking to Carl Parker and, we have to worry about the EVs with saltwater, but also, think of just internal combustion vehicles. Those things are very flammable too.
They are, and I was thinking maybe now that we know this happens all the time, I wonder if they'll be able to somehow encase the battery a little bit safer. But even if you do that, if you just think about saltwater alone, you don't want to drive just your normal car or bike or anything through it, because then you have to deal with the rust issue, Jordan. So saltwater just seems like bad all around, but it does seem to be good for our health. It seems like that's the only positive thing with it.
True. All right, well, as we move on, Helene left millions of people in the dark. So coming up, how new technology is helping utility companies plan for a more resilient future.
As Helene made landfall and swept across the southeast, the storm knocked out power to more than 4 million customers across Florida, Georgia, South and North Carolina, and Virginia. For some, it could take weeks before that power is fully restored.
Yeah, and Steph, climate change is making extreme weather events like this, like Helene, more frequent, and that's putting a stress on our aging infrastructure. Get this, according to Climate Central, of all the major U.S. power outages from 2000 to 2023, 80% of them were due to weather-related events. And while tropical systems only accounted for a small percentage of those outages, they tend to last the longest. And when you think about this, we're going to be talking about not only weeks, but even longer when it comes to other types of infrastructure stuff. Your power is so important.
Yeah, because exactly. It's not only power, but think about water, right? A lot of people here still don't have water, and it'll be some time before they can repair everything. And then we communicate so much by our phones. And Jordan, there have been people at power stations charging them up, but before the internet could come, they took it back old school and they started holding community meetings where everyone would come together. And it was something beautiful to see amongst all this darkness and tragedy.
Wow. Well, of course, as the road to recovery winds down for millions, there's no doubt that Helene will go down in history as a record-breaking storm. And here at the Weather Channel and on Pattrn, we will continue to tell everybody's stories. Stay safe, everyone.